Welcome, everybody. We are live with Brigham McCown, and I believe we've got Gregg Reuben here and a number of other folks. We're just ironing out a couple technical difficulties as we get this stream going.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what, Ben, I'll go ahead and start while you're checking on the back end, a couple of things to bring Greg up to the stage here. First of all, thank you so much for joining us today. This is the second in a series of informational listening sessions by the Alliance for Innovation and Infrastructure. AII is an independent national research and educational organization. We work to advance innovation across industry and public policy. We're actually the only nationwide public policy think tank dedicated to infrastructure. We explore the intersection of law, economics, public policy in the areas of transportation, energy, environmental infrastructure. Thank you so much for joining us today as we'll get started. Some of you may have been on the first listening session. Welcome back. It'll be typically the same format, but we are really here to listen to you, not actually to talk. And I think, frankly, I did a little too much talking last time around, so I really want to focus it on getting your ideas. As many of you know, I'm also on the USDOT Advisory Board. We're also excited to have Gregg Reuben join us today. He's the Chief Executive of Centerpark in New York City and is the chair of the U.S. Department of Transportation Advisory Board. I know he's on and listening. We're trying to figure out how to get him up on the stage, but Ben, any luck with that?
Still working on it. Unless it's something like a microphone permission or something on the local device, I'm working. But we know Greg's here. This is awesome.
Great. Let me turn it back over to you. Let's get started.
Awesome. Well, today we are once again opening the floor to public input. We'd love to hear anything that you all have to say, whether that's ideas, solutions, or just challenges you want to voice. Not only are these, insights that you're sharing helping AII prioritize our own research and education and outreach, but these are things that Brigham is able to take to his other roles, whether at Department of Transportation or otherwise. So really, truly, everything that you're saying is helping make a difference for research, education, and even federal policy. So with that, open invite to anyone. Feel free to raise your hand through the platform, and we will start calling on people as soon as we do. And don't be shy. Still working the permissions here. But while we wait, and please raise your hand even while I'm speaking, we've actually already gotten to work looking into some of the issues that were mentioned on our last listening session, which is really, really great. Jeff Swenson mentioned some issues in the trucking and freight relay space, which is really just fascinating stuff that we're working to incorporate into our own research agenda for the next 3 or 6 months. There's a lot of talk about parking for trucks and the number of available spaces, some turnover in the industry, and then also just differences with automation on the one end and inefficiencies where hours of service and other regulations can get in the way while even providing safety on the other end. So finding that right balance is stuff we're eager to explore. Let's see. I see that Greg has changed designation to speaker.
I just did that to see if that helped. Can you bring him up?
Okay. I am. Yeah, on my end, it says invited to stage, and I'm not sure why it's hung up in this technical glitch. But Yeah, eager to hear from anyone, even folks already in the live. Chris, Paul, Aaron, and some other folks. We'd love to hear anything that you guys might be working on. Don't see any hands yet. Let me try a couple of the things while we wait. And I would say also, please feel free to use the chat function. Even if you're not in a place you might be able to speak, happy to read out any insights that people might be wanting to share. We had a lot of great chats last time. And it's great because we can then download the chat history and use that as written feedback for our work. Yeah, I do see an Aaron coming up. So Aaron, I'm going to bring you up to the stage and would love to hear what you've got to say.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Morning.
So I guess, Brigham, this is kind of like an open-ended thing, something I've been thinking about. And I know Amtrak kind of falls under DOT jurisdiction, kind of not. It's kind of one of those weird half in, half out things. One of the main obstacles that Amtrak has been facing, and something you hear often about for its level of service, is that it does not own the right of way. And it's on these crazy long-term leases with low priority for the actual freight operators. So I guess the question or the provoking thought is, with the now consolidation of the massive freight operators, is that an opportunity for Amtrak to maybe improve their service, to negotiate better terms, or even buy right-of-ways? Is that something you've seen? Is that something that you think is worthwhile for us to look into?
Yeah, Aaron, thanks for the question. That's something that we could look in. If you go back to the history of all this, every Class 1 railroad had to have passenger service. It was required to have passenger service. And as a compromise for allowing the Freight 1 railroads to get out of passenger service, they had to agree to give passenger service from Amtrak priority on all of their lines. There was no passenger service railroad that had its own infrastructure like you have in Japan or in some parts of Europe. Passenger service has always been an integral part of the rail network. And, what we find is, and what you've seen DOT do recently is, with some of the high-speed rail projects, they're just so expensive because of the real estate to allow for dedicated track. And even in cases where a certain West Coast state has been trying for years to build high-speed rail, and they've sunk billions into it, and absolutely nothing has happened in, I don't know, Ben, 10, 15 years. I can't remember the exact date. So that's kind of the give and take. I know the DOT, when I was part of it back in the early 2000s, did an inspector general study that basically said it would be cheaper to give everybody a first-class ticket for anyone who has ridden Amtrak in the preceding 5 years than it would be to keep plowing money into Amtrak. You get into, I think, people in the regions really want Amtrak. Certain people love it. Certain people don't like it. It's been a divisive issue over time, and I just this is something that would love to get ideas on. There are some short line railroads that work really well for passenger service. Trinity Railway Express in Dallas, for example, it would be a good one. But and even there, I think they share some track. So if you have any specific proposals, though, we'd love to hear about them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's like two misconceptions often when you're talking about Amtrak. One is the perception that it needs to be servicing a coast to coast service. I think we're at the point where it's just frankly unrealistic. We're never going to have an express 300-mile-an-hour New York to LA train, New York to San Francisco. It's not realistic. Where I think Amtrak has pretty good success and has the opportunity to be a really powerful player is in like these hyper regional routes. So obviously the Northeast Corridor, we're all probably sick and tired of hearing about that. Amtrak just rolled out Houston to New Orleans for the first time since Katrina. Now, the fact that it took so long is a whole separate conversation, but it's already doubled its expected ridership in the first 2 months. So clearly there's appetite in these small little pockets. There's talks about like the Chicago route. So St. Louis, Minneapolis, Indianapolis, kind of like these hyper regional spokes. But again, like one of the proposals I've read about, and maybe it's something that we can look deeper into, is that a great use of the money is not increasing the infrastructure, but actually buying or getting priority on the right of way, so that you're not spending 5, 10, 15, 20% of your actual ride time waiting for a 3-mile Freightliner to go by you while you sit idle on the spur track. So I thought that was a really interesting proposal. And to your previous point, it's not building infrastructure, which we're notoriously bad at in these kinds of arrangements, but actually putting money towards something that's going to make the operations better instantaneously. So yeah, maybe something to look into.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Aaron. Appreciate it.
And I see we have Paul here, ready to go next. So Aaron, I'm going to move you off the stage. Thank you for your comments. And I'm going to invite Paul up. Paul, let's just make sure your mic and camera are on if you'd like. Let's see, I see you're muted. Let's see, unmute. Paul, if you can hear us, you're muted.
Okay, hear me now.
Yes, sir.
So this is the same as last time. I unfortunately can't get my video working, or you'd see that I'm safely traveling down the road on the passenger seat as my wife drives. So we have to be very careful on our roads, as you know. So am I coming through loud enough?
That's perfect.
Okay. So I brought this up last time, and I'll bring it up again for Brigham and Company. By the way, first of all, I want to say I really appreciate these conversations. This is critical to our infrastructure, so thanks for doing this. But as a member of ITS America, one of the things that the mantra they keep talking about is digital infrastructure, and just how important digital infrastructure is to our future going forward. So one of the things that large organization does is they provide feedback to folks like Brigham and the USDOT on the 2026 surface reauthorization. And one of the requests is that in other areas of the infrastructure, the percentage of R&D funding and such for new technologies that are going to benefit us digitally is a little bit higher. So we're not going to talk about numbers here, but could Brigham or even yourself, Benjamin, speak to the fact that moving forward with respect to the increasing resilience for infrastructure, increasing life safety input on the 40,000 deaths that occur per year, what will the 2026 surface reauthorization timing and scope look like going forward to support the digital infrastructure? I'll leave it with that.
Yeah, Paul, that's a great question. And before I tell you, I have no idea what that answer is. Let me just say I've been texting with Greg. He is on. He is listening to you all. He sends his apologies that he's not able to jump up on the stage, but having the chair of the USDOT Transportation Advisory Board with us today is a real treat. So, Greg, thank you so much for your time today and for being here with us. If we figure out the technical stuff, we'll try to pop him up on stage, but he is hearing all of this. Paul, who knows? The surface reauthorization bill Some years it's pretty routine. Some years it's pretty straightforward. Some years it's a knockdown, drag out. Some years it just doesn't happen at all. Then there's an extension. The DOT, in coordination with the White House, will likely present an administration bill to present to the Congress. That's something they're starting to work on now. When that gets finished and when that gets sent up to the Hill, I don't know. What the Hill does with that, I don't know. You talk about highway deaths, and this is something near and dear to my heart as a lifetime safety expert and a recovering trucking regulator and a few other things, is that numbers have not gone down, not really. And when you consider VMT, vehicle miles traveled, have gone up. So some can say we've gotten safer. We have hundreds, if not multiples of hundreds of regulations designed to make cars and trucks safer, to have pedestrian crumple zones on the front of the bumpers, to do this, to do that, where seatbelt reminders, don't leave your kid in the car, airbags, the ever incessant beeping to make you put on your seatbelt. And I don't know that a lot of it has had a major effect. Speed and distracted driving has always been some of the top causes. And, we're driving faster than we've driven in the past, and we're more distracted than we've ever been. It's pretty hard to, I call it nanny regulation, to force people to change their behaviors when they don't want to. If you've not put on a seatbelt by now, you're probably not going to put a seatbelt on no matter how loud that buzzer gets. And if you're not going to put your phone down when you're driving, it's tough. It's a really tough question. And I think we need some outside the box proposals on how to end distracted driving, which is really impaired driving, same as using drugs or alcohol. And how do we deal with distracted driving? How do we keep working on alcohol? And how do we deal with the proliferation of marijuana legalization in states across the country that have also had an impact on driver safety?
Yeah, thanks, Brigham. I'll also make the comment, one of the other areas going back to the surface transportation and reducing those deaths on the road. What I find is very encouraging going forward, in addition to, the brick and mortar issues we have in this country, bridges and making things resilient, is this big discussion I'm seeing in the industry about the use of AI and the use of AI to try to find ways to provide the intelligence on the roads to reduce, traffic deaths and such. And so, anyway, it's going to be an exciting future going forward. I'm very excited about what I heard from USDOT overall when they were quite present at the last annual ITS meeting, and they talked about their strong initiatives going forward to implement modern technologies and traditional technologies going forward to combat, as you say, the life safety issues, and to just make everything more resilient going forward. So, yeah, there's a lot of work out there, but exciting. And so, thank you very much, both of you, for this discussion.
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Paul mentioned resilience, and while we're thinking about surface reauthorization, there's another bill working its way through Congress on pipeline reauthorization. And I just saw this week the text of the bill from the House side that includes damage prevention and specific areas about improving excavation safety around pipelines and other things. And that all relates, that's transportation. Brigham, you said more times than I can count that pipelines are a transportation mechanism. We think about it sometimes like it's an energy infrastructure, but it's the transportation function that's moving materials. And so obviously it also falls under DOT. It's great to see even Congress is implementing more resilience-focused excavation damage prevention things in the pipeline law. Brigham, we do have some chats here, and a few of them are focused on the advisory board.
Okay, I'll try to answer that to the extent that I can. I'd love to have Gregg answer those, but and maybe some of them we can answer, some of them we can't. But before we do that, Ben, I was just doing some digging online here after Paul was talking, And what is fascinating is from 2013 to 2022, U.S. traffic, this is according to the internet, U.S. traffic death rates have risen by 22.5%, whereas rates in the 27 other high-income countries have declined by almost 20%. And fatality rates for pedestrians is up 50% from 2013. And whereas overall road fatalities are now 3 times higher than they are in Canada, Australia, or France. So we're definitely going the wrong way. We've also spent a record amount of money on safety programs. So, there is a disconnect, but if anybody has what the magic answer is, I'd love to hear it. And my guess is it's a combination of different factors, including speed in urban areas. But go ahead, Ben. What's the question here?
So the first one looks like it's kind of DOT wide, but Chris Hill asks, has DOT started to define priorities and focus areas? Or maybe this is the same question. I think he's asking the board. Has it started to define priorities and focus areas? And then are there other mechanisms like this for the board to collect feedback and public input?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We had our first board meeting last quarter. We'll have another board meeting coming up here next month. It's an advisory board, so we advise. We don't tell DOT or the White House what to do, but we can suggest. And DOT itself has been focused for several months on its priorities. We've already had some of those priorities released to us all in the public, trying to fix air traffic control and the air traffic organization itself, prioritizing getting things built, permitting reform. That's all been publicly announced. And then I think you'll see a lot coming from the highway bill when and if it's released. And our board meetings are public. And as Gregg just pointed out here on chat with me, DOT will be presenting initiatives, which will include 7 to 10 major initiatives and projects coming up, and that the advisory board at our next meeting, and Gregg, tell me if I have this wrong, but you're talking about our next meeting, which is open to the public. It live streams. The board will try to address each sector of the transportation ecosystem. And he just said correct. So good. Gregg, anything else? You can use me as your mouthpiece. If you can type while we're talking, I will convey. And that meeting should be on October 22nd. It's not been finalized yet, but that's the date we are shooting for. So stand by for that.
Not sure if Gregg's typing to you, Brigham, but there's a couple more comments I'll go ahead and read. Not sure if you can speak to this, so I'll read it as a recommendation instead of question.
Okay.
Again, from Chris Hill, it seems like coordinated effort across federal agencies seems like an opportunity to move innovation and infrastructure forward. So that's in the context of this DOT Advisory Board coordinating with other agencies like DOE or others, and potentially their respective advisory boards. So if that's not already happening, that could be a great way to increase the flow of conversation and ideas.
Yeah, so a lot of the advisory boards are statutory, so it's prescriptive what their mission is and isn't, and what their role is and isn't. And I think clearly the department and this administration as a whole, as frankly did the last administration with their priorities, pretty effective at a whole of government approach to what it is they're trying to accomplish. For our advisory board, I think we're pretty locked onto and want to use all of our energy in helping advise the DOT. And then DOT, every initiative has an interagency concurrence process, their interagency council. So That in government is already set up, and we don't want to try to replicate it. The one thing that Gregg just mentioned too, which I'll throw out, is that our infrastructure system currently has, think about this, currently has $4.6 trillion of deferred capital expenses. The ASCE has graded our infrastructure as a D, and that's the American Society of Civil Engineers. I'm thinking in the back of my head, fair, they're civil engineers, they want to build stuff, but it's a D, and it has been a D for a long period of time. And in order to bring it up to a B, we've got to make these expenditures over the next 10 years, Gregg is saying, and I totally agree with that. And a lot of that can only be accomplished with an emphasis on more public-private partnerships, on more P3s. Compared to other countries, we are far behind in this regard. And so this could be a contributing factor in road fatalities, as our infrastructure is just, not up to speed. And I know one of the things we do a less stellar job on in a lot of metropolitan areas is separating pedestrians, bikes from roadways itself, and perhaps that's some of it. So this Gregg says that the U.S. has done fewer than 500 P3s during the last 30 years, and I think he's going to say we need to do another 500 in the next 3 or 4 years in order to catch up. And full disclosure, I'm a huge fan of P3s, and I do sit on a P3 company board. So, but these are Gregg's comments coming forward right now. So, which I totally agree with. And he says, Gregg's saying that all of these P3s over the last 30 years have totaled only about $100 billion. And we need to do $200 billion a year in order to catch up with our infrastructure.
Wow. That's wild.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yep. That's hard to see the catch-up game. Is that something that the federal government can kind of turn that faucet, or is that something that has to come from the private sector to propose? What's the dynamic there?
Well, I think, from my perspective, it's a little bit of everything. We have to have a stable economic environment where people want to invest. Maybe you or I want to invest in a project, like we invest in a mutual fund. Maybe there are deals that can be made. There's so much private capital sitting on the sidelines, but if it's very speculative, if it's high risk, people are not going to invest, and you don't deploy capital willy-nilly. You want to know what your return on your investment is going to be. And so what can we do to create a framework that rewards people for investing in infrastructure? I think we've relied, certainly when it comes to road, on public money for a long time. Keep in mind that most of our infrastructure, aside from roads and bridges, and to some extent mass transit, it's in private hands already. And even public transit used to be a totally private function until the rise of suburban neighborhoods and the decline of the city core centers in the 70s. Public transit or private transit operators just walked away, and it's become a municipal or regional matter since. A couple things that Gregg's chiming in here too. Let me mention this. When he's talking about all the money that we need to spend to get our infrastructure up to a B over the next 10 years, he's saying this can only be accomplished with an emphasis on more P3s. And I'm sorry, I already said that, which lags behind. One of the things he's saying also is it's a combination of factors, but the USDOT can lead the initiatives and create the framework that rewards the investments. And that he believes will likely propose a dedicated P3 agency even to exist within the DOT. Right now, grant funding and some emphasis on P3s is handled through the policy shop, through the Build Bureau. which has the loan function as well, the Build America Bureau. He says that doing this would help private partners de-risk some of the investments and streamline efforts to approve and build. I think, the other piece that's out there is the federal government has largely operated as the money guy, but the federal government doesn't actually build anything. All of that gets pushed down to the states. And traditionally, it's been the federal gas tax, which we talked about last time we were on here. But really, we can keep taxing people, or we can figure out a way to, as Gregg points out here, to help private partners de-risk some of this investment and streamline efforts to approve and build new infrastructure.
I see Paul's raised his hand again. Something that was said must have piqued his interest. We'll bring you back up, Paul, and then we have a few more chats to read to keep that conversation driving forward. Paul, we've invited you up, and it looks like you'll be here in 1 minute. Okay, you're muted still, but we can see you now.
Can you hear me now?
Got you.
We are figuring out this technology. So here I am again.
Hey, don't feel bad. I feel the same way, Paul.
Safely driving the car. I want to make another comment. So Brigham's talked about the rating of our infrastructure. And I spent a lot of time, along with AII, looking carefully again at the overall abysmal rating of our infrastructure in the U.S. overall. The numbers that stuck in my mind, so I guess I'm just echoing what you said, Brigham, as confirmation. We're not only roadside infrastructure, but the infrastructure across the 18 verticals that the American Society of Civil Engineers analyzes. And I think the overall rating was a C. Broadband being a little higher because it's being built out, but other entities and vertical markets, like you said, being much lower. In fact, the thing that stuck in my mind, and this is why I'm excited about the work that USDOT is looking at in terms of looking at not just brick and mortar, but new technologies, is that there was something like a $10 trillion investment suggested and required to make us future ready in the U.S. for the next decade, 10 trillion. And the comment when I read that report was that we've only identified 4 or 5 trillion of that 10 trillion. And we have a difficult time in finding money these days for projects like that. So the thing that I'm excited about, and I'll just pass this on as a comment, is if you can't find the money to make something completely robust and bulletproof, since it never really truly can be bulletproof, then the more we can put in intelligence into our infrastructure so that we can identify when things are going to start going bad early on, or when we have the opportunity for preventative maintenance, or we have the opportunity to redesign a road or redesign a bridge, the more we can use a fraction of that $10 trillion to make our infrastructure as resilient as it possibly can be. That's what I get excited about. So that's where I think the synergies and I think the rising tide of discussion that's occurring in organizations like AASHTO and ITS America in conjunction with USDOT is going. It's very exciting to me because the more intelligence, we're always talking about AI, we're always talking about data centers, but there's no reason why our infrastructure in and of itself can't be as intelligent as some of the data centers we're putting in right now. So that was my comment. And Brigham, you're right. I did want to comment on that because it's abysmal that our infrastructure is in the state it is right now with everything that's about to occur in the U.S. So the fact that Brigham and the USDOT and the Advisory Council are looking at this diligently makes me sleep better at night.
Well, Paul, thank you. Thank you very much. Very kind of you. I'm one of 12, and again, we've got a great team of people that largely, I think, Gregg and the White House has assembled, and so I'm honored to be on it. When we talk about infrastructure as a whole, and I'll let you jump off the stage there, but as we talk about infrastructure as a whole, it's not just transportation, right? It's water, it's sewer, it's electricity, it's everything that is part of our it's energy is part of our ecosystem here. And again, as we were saying, there's a huge deficit, especially on the electric side. The question is going to be, which is outside the DOT purview, but the question is going to be who's paying for all the new transmission lines? Is it going to be the data centers? Is it going to be the consumers? And what is the right balance there for everything that we need to put on? Ben, you said you had a couple of others. So Paul, thank you so much for that. Ben, you said you had a couple of others we should try to get to in our remaining 15 here.
Yeah, there's another chat from Aaron. It looks like a suggested book. Suggest reading Killed by a Transit Engineer by Wes Marshall. Should note Aaron is an engineer, so this is maybe self-deprecating. It's a comprehensive look at our street design over the last century. We have systemically prioritized car efficiency over everything else. Driver, pedestrian, and cyclist safety is not even secondary. It's completely ignored. And engineers aren't apathetic. Our system and codes are just built for one purpose only. It's driving. Mm-hmm. Great comment. I've actually heard that from a number of other people recently, including a number of graduate students who have been asking us for comment on some work. The next one is from Chris Hill again, and it's a question to both Brigham and Gregg, but it relates to the uptick in interest and adoption of nuclear. And so the question on transportation side is that nuclear waste and disposal creating new energy in the DOT? Is there perceived or real risk? Does the regulatory framework need to be adjusted in any way?
No, I mean, I think, as the guy that led PHMSA, which is where nuclear materials all get regulated for transportation, the regulation and transportation of hazardous materials is very robust. And, we have an enviable safety record on nuclear, which is class 7, but also on all the hazmat that is moved around the country. It's a very robust and mature regime, so I don't really see any issues there. We safely transport, I think it's now up to 2 million shipments of hazardous materials a day by air, land, rail, sea, and separately, not counting the pipeline folks. So I think we'll be in pretty good shape there. Getting back to, I want to go back, but Chris, thanks for the question. I want to go back to, traffic planning. Interestingly, we're seeing more and more roundabouts put in the U.S., and most people are like, oh, we got those from England. I said, well, no, not so fast. And Ben, you may actually know this, but it was William Phelps Enos, as in the Eno Center, 1905 Columbus Circle in New York City. That was really the first modern traffic circle, the roundabout. And this was actually exported. And the official first highway traffic circle was 1925 in New Jersey. This was actually transported to the UK, and we're seeing things reemerge back here. But there are a lot of good ideas out there for what I'll call traffic calming measures. Gregg is pointing out here that one of our initiatives of the advisory board is a Reimagine Curb campaign, and to work in dense urban environments to begin with better utilization of existing road and curb space that can better accommodate all the participants in the transportation ecosystem. And one issue is in New York City, he says bike lanes encompass 25% of the road space, but only account for 1.7% of the commuters. And how can we better manage the bandwidth that we currently have while keeping it, extremely safe? One other comment that Gregg made from a previous conversation, I want to go back and pick this up, was nope, sorry, already covered it on the P3. Sorry, already covered it. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, we actually have another chat, but Calvin, if you're on in the live audience, I'd love to hear you chime in. in part because the chat was entered a little bit ago, so I've lost the context. So if you are able to raise your hand, and I'll bring you up. I'll just give a minute to see. If you're not, if you could throw an extra chat in there with some background before I read it. Great to have so much participation in the chat. I think it's a great dynamic to have both speakers and written entry. So appreciate that, everyone.
Yeah, and Ben, while you're doing that, Greg just furthered his comment on talking about the New York City, and in general, a reimagined curb campaign, CC. I'm going to have to figure out how to say that better. He's talking about New York City. He says, yet we have 125,000 trucks a day, 250,000 trucks a day in and out of Manhattan. And they're forced to double park on the streets because you have 30,000 city bikes utilizing the most valuable curb space in the country, i.e. the sidewalks, right? I guess. Yet City Bike, which is owned by Lyft, pays the city next to nothing for the service. So I think he's digging into how do we better utilize curb space? How do we better utilize sidewalks? How do we get trucks in and out of the city, loaded and unloaded? I personally always preferred alleys and was sad when DC got rid of their alleyways because it was a way to load out back, right? And that's a very Midwest Chicago-like thing to do too. So that's what I grew up with was all the utilities and trucks and garbage were in the alleys. So nothing ever had to come out front. But that's maybe my personal experience.
Brigham, we do have another hand raise here. We have Calvin, who had added to the chat, and looks like we'll hear from him directly here.
Hey, Calvin.
Good morning, everybody. My comment there, it was more so because of a system that I've been working to build to gather a lot of this data to help justify, does this need a roundabout? Does this need just a stop sign? Hey, these potholes are very severe, that sort of thing. So I was curious what kind of the DOT's thoughts were around that, because I haven't really seen that much initiative from them so far from just the conferences we've been to.
You're specifically asking tools and data to justify those investments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And sorry, in pothole repair or in what way, Calvin?
Well, so basically what we do, we'll just augment the videos that are captured on any cameras. And then from those cameras, I'll pick up every bit of data that you can imagine, right? So people's cars, if there is a pothole, there's a crack, there's a light that's out, and then filter that, pass that back as an insight. Hey, these intersections, this section of road needs a lot of attention. Maybe signal timer's broken. This one needs some focus.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Calvin. I really appreciate you being here today. I think you're spot on. It's we could deploy AI, we could deploy miniaturization, we could deploy a lot of things that are not even cutting edge any longer, but are commercially available off the shelf to better manage throughput, traffic signals. If you look on the side of the road, there's this giant crate that you could put a body in. That's a steel cabinet that holds, the traffic intersection, which could be miniaturized and could actually be timed correctly and tied together with other traffic lights to make stuff flow better. And, these things also cost a huge amount of money. I get it. They have to be robust, cold, hot, survive. But we could do a lot better with this type of technology. To your point with the cameras that could better pick out and identify street defects or other things going on. You still, where I live, even on Interstate Highway, I have to try to figure out a phone number and then figure out whether it's in the city or whether it's the county or whether it's the state, who fixes the pothole. Then I called the wrong state department engineer because I was in the wrong sector. And then it took, and most people I'm sure give up. It took me about an hour to figure this out. And the lady other line goes, "Oh yeah, this is the approach ramp on I-75 and so, isn't it?" I go, "Yes." It's got a giant hole that's been there a month. "Oh, we know." And I'm like, for crying out loud. So, it's hard. In Washington, D.C., there's a 3-digit number. A lot of cities have local 3-digit numbers where you can call and get practically anything fixed. Ben, maybe we need a 811 call like we have for pipelines for infrastructure related defects that could then just be routed to wherever they're supposed to get routed to. But this is a big issue. And Calvin, I've also seen in Europe, they have a truck that looks like a small garbage truck that comes by. It cuts a hole around the pothole. The machine does it all automatically. No human intervention. It sucks up all the old asphalt, and then it puts down a plug of a certain round size, not a square, round size, and then fixes the pothole and leaves. It's insane. Maybe we need something like that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your comments, though. But I think, to your point, a lot of technology that we could unleash here that would actually not be pie in the sky stuff, but would actually get stuff fixed and get stuff fixed quickly. But yet we still rely on pretty old school ways of fixing things.
Thanks, Calvin. I'm going to remove you from the stage, but appreciate the comments.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Calvin.
Looks like we just have a few minutes here. The remaining comment that came in when we were talking about the curbs in New York City and elsewhere, Aaron is an engineer again, said he has a lot of thoughts on shared curb space and would love to share more offline, which is a great way to kind of end, to say to everyone, please feel free to send us anything, reports, ideas, things you've written, things you've seen other people write. AII collects as much information as possible. And then we work with our independent advisory council at AII and other scholars and experts to really dig into those things and put out good comprehensive reports, as well as simple and direct educational material. So love the offer for extra support and extra help, and we just encourage everyone to share with us after the fact or on this call.
Yeah, so Ben, you're ending on an up note. I want to go back. You may have to have another up note. I want to go back for just a second to citywide congestion, and another note that Gregg forwarded while we were talking to Calvin, which is this notion that this congestion is just poor utilization of existing space in many respects. He points out too that the businesses lose out as access is limited. Here's something I didn't know. Did you know that New York City, question one, has how many parking spaces? New York City. Start in the 7 figures, but yeah, low 7-figure maybe, or more than 1 million. Yeah. How many parking spaces do you think New York has? That's right. You're spot on. 3 million parking spaces. And that only 3% of them are metered.
Huh.
So I think Gregg's probably saying we're not leveraging that asset to create more money that could then be put into the streets, and there may be no incentive for people to move around. I know sometimes they're by zone, right, for residential parking, but yeah, that's crazy. Only 3% of 3 million parking spaces are metered. And it disincentivizes turnover and furthers congestion by more than 30%, he says. Reversible streets is another solution. We're borrowing that from the past. Again, in the Midwest in particular and out east, we used to have reversible lanes. Cincinnati had reversible lanes. They would have a green or a red lights going across every lane of the highway, or later there were signs with arrows or X's or circles and X's. And so coming into town in the morning, If you had 6 lanes, maybe 4 of them, maybe 5 of them were all inbound lanes. And then going out, think of contraflow for hurricanes, other pieces that can be done. This can be done in a technologically more advanced way, and not including like the DC toll roads that are reversible, but they take an hour to reverse because of physical gates and things. But there are ways that you can better utilize the bandwidth of the roads, and really, there needs to be more pressure put on local and state agencies to make sure that they are reinvesting. For years, I'll single out Michigan, only because I'm from Ohio. So let me single out Michigan. They used to not spend their highway trust fund money on highways. They would spend it on other things. There's still, I don't know whether that's still going on. Somebody's going to call in and go, you Ohio person, that's not true any longer. We spend all of our money. Okay. But the point is, people are collecting revenue for roads, bridges, and highways, and they're not spending them on those, and they're not even spending them on anything related to transportation. So that's another piece, I think, of federal oversight to make sure we're spending the money on where the money's supposed to be spent.
Yeah. That's great.
But yeah, back to you. Give us all your stuff. AII, again, we'll take some of these ideas and go research them, and then throw some stuff together. And not only do we do things like post on our site, but we brief decision makers. We send out our reports. We do press calls on our reports. A lot of this makes its way to the Hill or to executive branch agencies. So yeah, hit us up. And we're excited about it as much as John Oliver's episode on infrastructure 6 years ago, From Last Night Tonight. If you have not seen it, I urge you to go back, because he hit the nail on the head back then about infrastructure. Transportation infrastructure is so important, and yet addresses, and he mentions the American Society of Civil Engineers, which made me think about it. But it's still true today. So check it out, John Oliver, Last Night Tonight. Just Google it. It's pretty funny and true.
And I think that is ending on a high note, Brigham. A good comic but true critique of American infrastructure and what's needed, even 6 years ago. A lot of that rings true today, like you said. Just want to thank everyone again for joining, for the comments, for the chats. Big, huge shout out to Gregg as well. I really appreciate your participation. Yes. Sorry it was a little awkward, but I think it was as full participation as anybody. So huge appreciation from our end.
Great. Thank you all so much.
All right. Have a great rest of your week.